be bad. I knew it. I've heard for years about how bad this movie is. Always considered one of the worst sequels of all time and one of the worst comic book movies ever made. But I thought to myself, oh no, it can't be that bad. Oh, how I was a very naive fool. Look, I said no cursing anymore, yes. But, oh boy, it's going to be hard to talk about this one without at least dropping a couple dams. This movie's reputation precedes it, to say the very least, and I mean, it's pretty much infamously known as the worst of the Superman movies, and one of the worst comic book movies of all time. In other words, it's everything that new people that are unfamiliar with these movies was afraid the first film was going to be. I know I had to talk about it eventually, just like eventually I had to talk about Batman and Robin, but for now, let's get this one out of the way. Because as soon as we talk about it, then we never have to even discuss it again. Thank goodness. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station. You want to surf anything and everything animation. I am a very done Jackson Small, your host. Welcome back to DC Live Volume 2. Welcome to the cataclysmic fail that is Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. I have been dreading this moment for at least 10 years. But the sooner it's over with, the sooner I can go back to forgetting it exists. Now, going in, I knew this movie was going to be bad. But, my goodness, I was not ready for just how bad it was actually going to be. I'm just going to be blunt. This is one of probably the worst movies I've ever seen. Ever. Now, is it like the worst comic book movie ever made? No. Is it the worst Superman movie? Oh, absolutely. Like, as boring as the next one we have to talk about is, that's going to end off this marathon tomorrow, it's at least watchable. This is downright unwatchable. And I feel drained, I feel angry, and I feel nothing but shame. Shame for everyone involved. Especially with Christopher Reeves. The poor man deserved a much better out as Superman. This is his final performance of the character. He deserved far better than this. And shame on all the corporate brain-dead idiots that greenlit and even made this movie possible in the first place. Because whereas the first two Superman movies did a good job balancing being cheesy, but also surprisingly adult, 3, and especially 4, have done everything in their power to be the exact opposite, to be as safe, cheesy, and non-threatening as possible. And with this film, it has reached its apex, to say the least. This is a movie I've been dreading about talking for a very long time, but I have to, because I'm a critic and that's what I do. Now, yes, I am biased towards Batman. I have made that clear. But I think I've also made clear in this marathon, heck, even clear in the first DC Lie, that I do like Superman. I don't hate him anymore. I used to hate him when I was a naive idiot, but now, after watching a majority of his movies, I have grown to respect the character. Do I still think Batman's better? Yes, but that's because of what I'm more familiar with, and what's more my personal preference. But I respect Superman. So don't think I'm bashing this movie just because of my bias towards the other side. No, I bash this movie because it's one of the worst, most insufferable things I've ever sat through. And that's even taking into account some things I refuse to review outright. I have a pretty scathing written review for this one. There is no cursing, but it's intensely negative. So, if you want to jump out now, I won't blame you. And if this does get much lower reviews than the other ones, I understand. This is pretty much beating a dead horse. But I need to say my piece about it because this is a movie that is a special kind of bad. So, here's my review. I hope, despite my overwhelming negativity, that you enjoy it anyway. And if you do enjoy this movie for whatever reason, I respect your opinion. A movie so infamously awful that its reputation precedes any and all hope you may have going in of it actually being decent. I knew I was in for a rough time, but I was hoping that it could be at the very least so bad it's good. Like Godzilla 98. That's a movie I can pop in and I can laugh at how bad it is. But no, it's just completely unwatchable. Acting is atrocious. Pretty much everyone sounds checked out, unfortunately Christopher Reeves included. Effects are horrendous, by far the worst effects of any Superman movie ever. Just, ugh, I can't even try to describe it to you. You just have to, just look it up for yourself. Go watch Nostalgia Critic's review of this movie. He shows a few parts with the effects, and it is an eyesore, to say the least. The story is confused and contrived. Yeah, it is very confused and contrived, because it starts out as, trying to prevent nuclear war, which, not a bad plot for a movie, but the way they handled it was bad. And then it just suddenly shifts over into another, we need to stop the bad guy and Lex Luthor, etc., thing again. For the third time. Give Superman 3 a little bit of credit. At least they had different villains and didn't just reuse Lex Luthor again. But this movie, they do have Lex Luthor again, and it's the same entire crap we've already been over with in the past two films. Stupid. Nuclear Man is one of the absolute worst comic book movies ever with zero character whatsoever. Pretty much imagine Doomsday, but lame. With terrible costume, bland, boring voice acting, awful effects, and zero actual character whatsoever. Just a mindless brute. The jokes fall flat. I don't know why they tried to make these movies comedic from 3 and 4. But, every one of these movies, the jokes get worse. I thought it couldn't get worse than Richard Pryor doing terrible stand-up that he obviously did not enjoy doing. But it somehow got worse here. I can't say how, because it's probably a spoiler, but yeah, the jokes here, I'd argue, were even worse. The recycling of footage is lazy as hell. This is one of the most infamous parts of the entire movie. Because of its budget, they did the stupidest thing they possibly could have done and just recycled a lot of footage, specifically for the flying scenes. They recycled the entire flying scene from the first movie. They recycle multiple times that one shot of Superman flying at the camera from the first movie, just changing the backgrounds into different stock images. It screams lazy cash-in. The action is terrible. That whole slow fight thing on the moon, why was that slow motion? What point did that have to be in slow motion? Zero gravity I get, but in slow motion the whole time? No, stupid. The directing is lousy. We are far, far from the great directing of Richard Donner from the first movie. The message is preachy rather than inspired. Look, I'm sure the message had good intentions of, stopping nuclear war and trying to unite people. I understand that. But the way that they did it, it came off as forced, out of character for Superman, and obnoxiously preachy. Like that court scene, it felt like I was sitting at a sermon with some kind of way of life or religion being bashed into my skull. It was so preachy that I was cringing. Like I said, I'm sure it had good intentions, but execution-wise, it fails. The pacing is unbearably slow. Why is this movie so slow? What's its excuse? So we can just keep rehashing a few scenes from the other movies as a highlight reel? Almost like they knew this was the last one? No. This did not need to be this slow, and you could have easily cut out a lot of the filler. But no, you didn't, because apparently you just did not give a crap. The plot holes are blatant. That's a spoiler. I can't say why they're blatant, but there's a lot of plot holes and they're blatant. The structure of the story is pretty much non-existent. This movie's story has no structure. None. The writing is some of the absolute worst that I have ever seen. And I'm not talking about it's so cheesy it just causes eye rolling. No. I mean writing so bad that it makes every character act out of character. Where you're constantly just scratching your head why the hell did that character do that? Or why is this character acting like this? Which is not fitting with the character. I swear, it was written by someone who was completely unfamiliar with the source material. Or at least that's what it felt like. Ugh, so freaking bad writing. The ending fails to feel earned. Nothing else to say. Runtime's obnoxious. Yeah, I have criticized all these movies for being too long, but this one especially. You could have easily made this one an hour and a half. But instead, you stretched it to 2 hours. And you feel how stretched it is because of all the meaningless, stupid recycling of other things from the other movies, plus extra filler that's meaningless and doesn't add nothing to the story but wastes time. You feel every freaking second pass by. Oh, it's so bad. It's just so bad. The cheesiness is cranked up to even more intolerable degrees. Look, here's the thing. I don't think cheesiness automatically makes a film bad. For those of you who don't know, I love the 1960s Batman movie. That thing is cheesy as all hell, but what made it work is that they knew what they were doing and they were having fun. You could tell on set that everyone was just having fun being so over the top and comic booky. But with these movies, the cheesiness, it just doesn't work. I already mentioned the bad jokes, but I can forgive some of the cheesiness in the first movie. It was made in the 70s. That's inevitable. Freaking horror movies have that same problem. But all the other ones I just don't really get. Yeah, I get it. It's a comic book. It's not always going to be dark and serious. I mean, I'm not asking for the Dark Knight here. And I like plenty of goofy, cheesy things. But I like goofy cheesiness if it's something that knows what it is. If it's something that's trying to be taken seriously, that's where the problem comes from. Because if I can't take you seriously when you're trying to be taken seriously but you're doing all this stupid crap, you just make yourself look incompetent. It's so dumb. The cinematography's boring. There's nothing pretty about this movie visually. Just absolutely nothing. The characters all feel like they're devolving rather than being developed properly. Like, everyone just feels like they're back to square one. Like, all that development from the other two kind of 3 movies, gone. And we're just back at square one. Now, with Superman and Lois, I get. But Lex Luthor, he shows no development despite having shown a little bit of development in the second movie. Friggin' Daily Planet people, they're all the same. Like, just no change whatsoever. It's just mind-boggling. Like, they were doing such a great job evolving and developing these characters through the first 2 films, and then starting with 3, they just threw it out. Like, I don't get it. I seriously don't get what they were thinking or why they thought it was a good idea. Gene Hackman gives his worst performance of Lex Luthor, just sounding completely disinterested. Yeah, I'd argue he's one of the worst actors in the movie. Now, he is a good actor when he's in a good role. I praised him as Lex Luthor way back in the first movie, and even in the second movie, he's still really good. But here, he sounds disinterested, checked out, and phoning it in. And it's maybe because his character shouldn't even be here in the first place, because again, it's just rehashing things from the first 2. Laziness. Laziness is the name of the game. The great love story of the first 2 films is completely thrown out. I get why, the whole memory wiping kiss thing, I get it, but here's the thing that ticks me off. They keep teasing like they're going to actually renew it, and then they just pull that same memory wiping kiss again, before the movie even ends. What's the point then? Dumb. Freaking pointless. Absolutely pointless. Contains a majority of the most stupid moments in the entire series. Lois breathing in space. Superman trying to end all nuclear war by taking away everyone's nuclear heads by force, acting severely out of character. Or Lex Luthor acting far more dumb than he should be. Or everything surrounding Nuclear Man. Like, yes, the whole spinning the world backwards thing from the first movie, that's still the stupidest moment in all the movies. But the rest of that movie was so great, I can forgive that stupidity. This is just stupid for the sake of stupid, with no thought or effort whatsoever. Rewatchability 0, I never want to watch this movie again. And there's no passion whatsoever from anyone involved, which screams cash in caused by corporate idiocy. I mean, my guess for why these 2 latter movies of this series are the way they are is because they were trying to pull in more kids by being over the top and goofy. And I can kind of see that standpoint, but here's the problem. You've already established that you are aiming for a much higher audience with your first 2 films. So to suddenly completely tone shift in the second half of your 4-movie series is a bafflingly stupid idea. And thankfully it backfired on them terribly because no one fell for it. Again, I'm sure the message about nuclear warfare was well-intentioned, but it should have been the main focus of the whole movie and actually show how it affects Superman, rather than just treating it as a side plot that's caused by this kid Jeremy from this classroom that's only in like the first third of the movie and then he disappears. In other words, he's just a plot device. This has been labeled as one of the worst comic book movies ever made and one of the worst sequels of all time, and in my opinion, they're right 100% on both fronts. I feel so bad that this is how Reeves goes out, and a big flying flip you. to the uncaring corporate morons who screwed him over and had to make this his last movie. Reeves deserved better after all the great work he's done as this character. Dull, boring, haphazard, lazy, passionless, unfunny, and insufferable, Superman 4 is, in the words of the Nostalgia Critic, anything but super, and is probably one of the worst movies I have ever watched. Downright unwatchable. And that's going to bring me to my final verdict for Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. It's low as it can go. It's well deserved. And I know it's going to seem very harsh to some people because people do enjoy this movie, and I get it. But to me, I just don't understand it, especially with how great the first two films are. For this to be the ending, it's a kick in the nuts. And because of that, final verdict for this movie is a 0 out of 10. A 0. It is unwatchable. It is unredeemable. It is corporate. It is stupid. It is dull. It is boring. It is idiotic. And it is one of the worst freaking things that I've ever watched for any review in my life. Don't watch it. Even out of your own morbid curiosity, don't watch it because it's not worth it. It is freaking trash. It's one of the worst comic book movies ever made. It is by far the worst Superman movie ever made. And it is easily one of the worst sequels ever made too. Is it worse than Batman and Robin? I don't know. Honestly, it's a toss-up. Both of them suck just as hard as the other. And they're both fourth installments of franchises that were previously established to be for a higher mature audience, and they went the other direction. For whatever stupid reason. Oh, I know the reason. Money. Well, here's the thing about chasing money, Mr. Corporate. When you chase money, you just completely alienate your audience. And as a result, both of these films bombed horribly. And they're now just infamous as piles of trash. Like, let people have creative freedom and don't be so damn controlling. That's the problem with corporations that make movies like this. Because their number one concern is money, and they don't give a single damn about the people that are putting in all this work to do it. It's sickening. And it is something that even to this day is still a problem. Sorry, I'm getting too existential in a movie review of freaking Superman, but that's what happens when you bore me to tears from watching your stupid, crappy movie. That's what you get. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time for the much better Superman Returns.
We cannot take it anymore. The time has come. Prepare to fight. We're ready for.